our I can statement is I can solve two-step equations. There are two videos previous to this video. There is the E5 part 1, so that is simplifying equations, and then E5a, which is multiplication two-step equations. Today's going to be an extension of both of those videos, so if you need to go back and review those first. All right, so first we're going to model our equation. So I have two x's and I have a third x. So that's it for side 1. Then on the second side, I have 1x, and I have 12. So that's what I have on that side. The first thing I want to do is recognize that instead of thinking of the first side as 2x and x, I can think of it as 3 total x's. So I have 3 x's on one side and 1 x on the other side. Before I can do any inverse operations, I need to get all of my x's on one side. So what I'm going to do is I am going to subtract 1x from this side and 1x from the other side. So if I'm subtracting an x from this side and subtracting an x from this side, I'm keeping my scale balanced. So what that means is left over, I will have 2 x's on one side and 12 on the other. If I want to know what 1x represents, I can divide one side into 2 equal pieces, and I can divide the other side into 2 equal pieces. So what I'm going to get for my final answer is x equals 6, because one side is equal to one side, so x equals 6. Now let's show this abstractly or algebraically. So my first step is combining like terms. So 2x plus 1x gives me 3x. My next step is to subtract x's from both sides, because x minus x cancels out to 0, so I'm left with just 12. And then 3x minus x gives me 2x. Okay? Then I'm going to divide both sides by 2, because 2 divided by 2 cancels out to make 1x, and 12 divided by 2 gives me 6. So x equals 6 is my final answer. Now let's check it. Everywhere in my original equation that I see an x, instead I'm going to write a 6. So I'm going to write 2 times 6 plus 6 equals 6 plus 12. And then I want to check to make sure both sides are equivalent. So 2 times 6 is 12, 12 plus 6 is 18, so one side equals 18. And 6 plus 12 equals 18. Since both sides are the same, that tells me that x equals 6 is the correct final answer. Okay, let's try another one. So I want to combine like terms on both sides. I want to simplify my expression. And remember, there's that simplifying expressions video for E5 that can help you with this topic. So I'm going to find all of my x's and all of my constants, and I'm going to combine like terms. So I just have 1x, and 1 plus 3 is 4. On this side, I have x plus x, so that's 2 x's, and then I have minus 3, or negative 3. Now I have x's on both sides and numbers on both sides. I've got to get rid of the x on one side and the number on the other side so that I have one side with just x's and one side with just constants, with just numbers. What I'm noticing is since I have 2 x's on one side and just 1 x on the other, it's going to be easiest if I subtract 1x from both sides. So this adds up to 0. I'm left with 4 equals x plus negative 3. So that's my first step. And then, since I have x's all together on this side, I want to get rid of that negative 3. The opposite of negative is positive, so I'm going to add 3 to both sides. Negative and positive add up to make 0, so I'm left with x equals 7. Now let's do the check of our final answer. So every time I see an x, so here, here, and here, I'm going to put a 7 in instead. So 7 plus 1 plus 3 should equal 7 minus 3 plus 7. And I'm going to type that into my calculator, or I can use mental math. 7 plus 1 is 8. 8 plus 3 is 9, 10, 11. 7 minus 3 is 4, and 4 plus 7 is also 11. Since these two are equal, I know that my final answer is correct. X equals 7. Now, remember when we did combining like terms, when we simplified expressions, sometimes we would see examples of the distributive property. Okay? Now, there are actually 2 different ways of solving this problem. Okay? So, method 1, we can distribute. So, 2 times x gives us 2x, and 2 times positive 2 gives us 4. And from here, it's a basic 2-step equation. Okay? So, I'm going to subtract 4 from both sides. And the reason that those cancel out is because 4 minus 4 is 0. So I get 2x equals 6. Then I'm going to divide both sides by 2. So I get x equals 3. If I do the check, I have 2 times in parentheses 3 plus 2 equals 10. Well, 3 plus 2 is 5. 5 times 2 is 10. So 10 equals 10. So this is our correct final answer. So method 1 was distributing and then solving. Now, sometimes if there aren't any other numbers, another method that I could use is first to divide both sides by 2. And that's because if I'm dividing this whole entire side, I have a factor of 2 on the top and bottom that cancels out. So I'm left with x plus 2 over 1. And I can actually just write that as x plus 2. But if I divide that side by 2, I've got to divide the other side by 2. 10 divided by 2 is 5. Then my next step is to subtract 2 on both sides. So when I subtract 2 from both sides, I get x equals 3. And remember that that's the same answer we saw in the previous example. So you can rewind to compare those 2 solution methods. Either one works. All right, I want you to try this one on your own. You can use either the distributive property method or you can use the dividing out the common factor method. Go ahead and start up the video when you're ready to check your answer. All right, I've split this into 2 screens so that we can kind of see the difference between the 2 solution methods. So the first method is the distributive property. So 6 times x is 6x. 6 times negative 2 is negative 12, and then that's going to equal 10. From here, I'm going to do inverse operations, so I'm going to add 12 to both sides. So those cancel out, so I'm left with 6x equals 22. Then I'm going to divide both sides by 6. So when I type into my calculator 22 divided by 6, I get 3.6 repeated. So that's my answer for this one. And I can do the check right now, so let's do that. So we're going to do 6 and then in parentheses, instead of 3.6 repeated, which you can't really type into your calculator, I recommend either converting this to a fraction, which would be 3 2/3, or using that original 22 divided by 6, and then minus 2 in your calculator. So 3 2/3 minus 2 is going to be 1 1/3. 1 1/3 times 6 does equal 10. So we know that we got the correct final answer. Now let's contrast this with the other side, the other method. I'm going to divide both sides by 6. 6 divided by 6 is 1, so I have one group of x minus 2, and that's going to equal 10 divided by 6. Now 10 divided by 6 is 1.6 repeated. Now I'm going to add 2 to both sides. So x is going to equal 3.6 repeated. So either way, we are going to get the same answer, either method. All right, I want you to try this one on your own. Start the video up when you're ready to check your answer. Now, do you need a hint? Your first step is to combine like terms. So I'm going to add together the 4x and the 2x on this side so that I end up with 6x plus 13. So 3x minus 23 equals 6x plus 13. So that's combining like terms. They're now in simplest form. Now I have x's on both sides and I have numbers on both sides. So I want to cancel out the x's first. So I'm going to subtract 3x from both sides. So I end up with negative 23 equals 3x plus 13. From here, it's the same as any two-step equation. So go ahead and pause the video if you want to finish it up from here. All right, so to finish it up, we would subtract 13 from both sides. So I'm going to have 3x all by itself on one side. And on the other side, don't be fooled. Negative 23 subtract 13 is like keeping our answer negative but adding the number parts. 23 and 13 added together is 36, so negative 36. Then I want to divide both sides by 3 because that's going to cancel that out. So I will get x equals negative 12. Let's do the check. So 3 times negative 12 minus 23. We want to see, does that equal 4 times negative 12 plus 13 plus 2 times negative 12? Now I'm going to type this entire number sentence into my calculator. Be really careful. In front of the 12s, you should use the negative symbol, but like in front of the 23, for example, you should use the subtract. So be careful about that. For both, I get a total of 59 on both sides. So that lets me know that my final answer is correct. Okay, see if you can do this one all by yourself with no hints. Remember the steps that we went through, and you can rewind and watch the last example if you need to before continuing on to this one. Are you ready to check your answer? All right, let's take a look. All right, so my first step was to combine the negative 4 and the negative 3 on this side to make negative 7, so I combined like terms. My next step was to get all of the x's on one side, so I got rid of the 2x on both sides, so I was left with negative 7 equals 5 plus x. I got rid of the 5 on the same side as x by subtracting it from both sides, so I ended up with negative 12 as my final answer for x. All right, for the check, everywhere I saw an x in my original equation, I plugged a 12 in instead. And then I typed the first side into my calculator and got negative 31. I typed the second side into my calculator and I also got negative 31. So what that tells me is my final answer of negative 12 is correct. All right. A cell phone company charges a monthly fee plus 25 cents for each text message. The monthly fee is $30 and you owe $59.50. How many text messages did you have? So I want you to try and see if you can write an equation on your own, then start up the video to check. All right, so our total, the amount that we owed, was $59.50. Okay, now there's a monthly fee for $30. So that's our starting amount, $30. Plus, for every text message, we paid 25 cents. Now, I made T my variable because I want my variable to represent the answer to the question, the number of text messages. So this is my equation. All right, to solve this equation, I'm going to subtract $30 from both sides. That cancels out, so I get 0.25 times T, and that's going to equal $29.50. Then I'm going to divide both sides by 0.25. That cancels out, so I get T equals 118. So my answer for this one is 118 text messages. Okay, remember you can watch this video as many times as you need to solidify this concept. The equations that we saw in today's lessons are the most complicated ones you're going to see so far, but if there's something that you're struggling with, go back and watch the first two E5 videos as a refresher. Thanks for watching.